Good morning, friends, neighbors, fellow travelers on this big old earth of ours. We are lighting the candle, a world that works. My name is Bill Correll, and this is episode 88. And we're really excited about this. And once again, I get to share this next hour or so, or what seems like an hour, with my dear friend, Lisa Sheehan. And the waving back at you, Lisa. The folks at home can't see that, but you have the best smile ever on right now. So the main thing here for us is to have conversations and to seek empowerment and enlightenment and all that other stuff. A lot of E-words we used way back in the beginning. But where we're at right now is this has kind of grown into an opportunity for us on a weekly basis to just explore, what goes on in our culture and how people talk about things, and what's available for people that are interested in learning more about themselves primarily. And I think there was a philosopher from 5,000 or 6,000 years ago that basically said that in every interaction, what you come away with is the opportunity to learn more about yourself and learn less about what goes on outside of you. So said differently, that every time there's an opportunity to learn something about somebody else, what you're really learning is about yourself, and that new information that you have gives you a little bit more to work with in terms of creating yourself, not as an accident, but as something that's really worthwhile, and definitely pays dividends by having thoughts that are your own, as opposed to the 60 to 80,000 thoughts that you have on a daily basis that you don't know where they came from. And some of those you should put down immediately and walk away. So with that said, we like to have some sort of a diving board topic. And Lisa, have you got anything that's kind of present for you right now that you'd like to chat about for a little while?
I actually thought we could start with a poem.
A poem? I like that.
And I discovered it just yesterday. He's an Irish poet, Michael O'Sullivan, although it's spelled Gaelically, so it doesn't look like that when you stare at it, but I kind of know.
Yeah.
And the poem I liked is called What to Hand On. And it kind of summarizes what you just said and then how I kind of feel.
Excellent.
So here we go. I'd wish to grow wise through gears of existence, to read the gradient in each phase of life, just to coast down the slopes beyond travailing times, to know the right hat for the right company and the rhythm of each interaction, chiming in from the periphery, to read the grain of every conversation, to fall in love in the prime of life, seed sown of deathbed smiles, waves of well-being lap at low tide, imploring your reluctant side to break even one cycle learned as a child. For wisdom knows what to hold and what to hand on, which to give and what to keep, where to dig and what to bury, when to wake and how to sleep. Our wish for wisdom, still a whisper, the source of which still buried deep. So soul brother and soul sister, are we changed by what we meet?
That's really, really nice.
Isn't it?
It is. I kind of got this image of, when children make decisions, it's almost like they put on a piece of clothing that they outgrow, but never take off.
Yeah.
So that metaphor in terms of kind of having the opportunity to sort of unlearn something that you learned as a child that's no longer serving you. That's exactly what we were kicking off on here. And to put yourself in that place of being a work of art, shall we say. And what if people really regarded themselves as already perfect. And now I got to go and discover what that means for me, you know? And it certainly is cool to do that with other people. And I know you and I, whenever we, get into conversations with people, we really think that we're trying to either know more about them or know what they're thinking and why, and all these sort of things. And what we're really doing is having an internal conversation with ourselves about what they're saying, and in many cases, that's as close as it ever gets to actually experiencing another human being and understanding, the conversation one to one. You folks at home, I mean, you smile, at me right now, I can feel it. And there's someone in your mind that you're thinking of right this minute that either the last conversation went really swimmingly well and you're going to get energy from that for the next 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe it didn't go so well. And maybe there was a failed communication that left both of you feeling, diminished and in some way incomplete. So I appreciate, the thought that went into choosing that poem and your willingness to share it with us today, Lisa. And how did it speak to you?
Well, I know we've mentioned before. I think I've said before that I'd love to be an elder at some point, and that just growing old does not qualify you for being such. You have to take the wisdom of life with you and be able to share that with other people. And also the fact, like you said, of going back to the simplicity of childhood, how you came into this world perfect, and then you cloaked yourself with all sorts of cultural clothing, so to speak, and masked your true self, basically. So I'd like to get back to that part of my person, and then be able to share that as an elder, as a wiser person that has discovered that what I really need is just inside and not out there in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of models for that elder behavior. And the ones that present themselves as like a real opportunity for me are the ones where questions get asked of the elder, and the elder never answers the question. The elder typically answers the question with a question. And what I've always loved is that the access to wisdom is not in hearing the words. The access to wisdom is in struggling to understand and make it your own. So wise speech is always in the ear of the listener. It's 100%. Never comes out of the mouth on the other side. It's always what's being taken on board by the person who is listening. So as a listener, you and I have this really immense opportunity to always intend to get better at it, to become a more rewarding listener, to find gold in every circumstance, and to find, an upside in every downside. And it all starts, I think, for me with a statement. If you start off, and if I start off, and I remember that my goal is always to never leave anything in an unsatisfactory condition. So that's really noble, right? And that implies kind of a boundless amount of courage. It really has this whole effect of being courageous in moments when some other emotion has really got you by the throat, And the other part of that is that in watching folks that I consider to be wise and to be elders, and elders, I want to say, has nothing to do with age. It has everything to do with mastery of circumstance, in my opinion. And what that basically means is that in any circumstance, someone who is being an elder, and you can't do this all the time, but when it's actually happening, what's going on in the moment is not upsetting. And it's not upsetting. What it is what it is, and that's what you relate to. what's going on and not your thoughts about what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So in this whole idea that, and any idea what kind of a time frame that was written? Was that an 1800s poem or
Oh, I think it's,
modern?
yeah,
Okay.
pretty sure.
Well, the notion of somebody giving credit to their thinking to the 5-year-old that they used to be, well, as a starting point, right? Not to be bad and wrong about it, but really to kind of understand the age of a conversation when you start feeling these emotional responses to things that, gee willikers, at whatever age you are now, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, you might have a little bit different reaction to if you used all of that time that you've been on the earth to your advantage, as leverage to not live and die in every moment in conversation, if you will. So the whole summary of that for me, coming down right to the essential elements of it, were to have that opening and that idea, no matter what's going on, to have a choice and the freedom to make a decision of what to hand on and what to keep and what to not pick up and what to let go. So there's a lot of freedom in the decision that you actually do have those choices. And there's this whole kind of a neat thing wherever you are right now. Bring all of your maturity, bring all of your experience, and then be daring to experience it with the naivete of a child.
Basically, let it go.
Yeah, I mean, that gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
And it's a remarkable thing that ability to just be open to the curiosity and the inquisitiveness and the willingness to get things wrong, but just do them, right?
Right.
It goes away early. I'm looking at my 9 and 10-year-old grandchildren right now. They're starting to look more like old men at times, and they're wonderful. They're completely wonderful. And I just remember these moments where, like my daughter Heidi, when she was 3 years old, she would fracture any multisyllabic word and get it wrong, man. But she was just like out there going full tilt boogie, trying to communicate, in big people talk. And that's inspiring for me, to be around that. And I'm not around children all that much anymore. And I'm actually taking a look, Lisa, at how I might be able to do a little bit more of that, at least with teenagers in high school or possibly college students, and re-invite them before they get stuck in their ways and up to their eyeballs in college debt and all that other stuff that comes at you and reduces the number of times that you can choose to do things in your life. Like, just to remind them right now, do you know that from this moment on, you can do absolutely any damn thing that you want to?
Correct. You just lose. All I could think about was like a study or that where people, like, you ask kindergartners if they all, who wants to sing a song, and they all enthusiastically wave their hand. But by the time they get to first grade, you ask the same question of the same children, and you might get one or two hands.
Yeah, we beat that out of them very quickly, don't we?
Yeah, just, yeah, the sheer abandonment of, like, just wanting to do something, anything, at
Yeah.
any moment, asked by anyone, you know.
Yeah, it's actually a sales job to convince many people that they intrinsically are absolutely perfect the way that they are.
Mhm.
And the list that they have is so compelling and so long and so detailed. And no, man, you got to get this. Everyone, absolutely everyone that ever lived and everyone that is alive now has experienced all of those things that didn't work. 100%.
Right.
And what I like and what I'm inspired by is people who take the moment to invite other people to that conversation. The ones that we consider to be successful, but when we lift the hood and we start looking in there at what their personal relationships are, and marriage ain't doing so good. Yeah, they got a lot of money. A lot of people think that they're really, really cool people, but case in point, you look at what's been going on for the Bezos couple, or the Gates couple, or some of these others. You know who I think, and I hope I'm never proven wrong about this. I've always just liked Warren Buffett.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked Warren Buffett because, in my opinion, he and another man, Jack Welch, who used to be in the old days, the firebrand leader of these major corporations, took that to heart. It wasn't a job they were going to have for 2 or 3 years until somebody else would pay him 3 to 4 times as much money to run another corporation. So you look at Tom Watson, at IBM. You look at, I want to say Edsel Ford, not Henry Ford. I think Edsel made the biggest difference in that corporation in the 1940s and 50s, and he doesn't get credit for anything,
Right.
But if you read the history, I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to invite you to go take a look at somebody who had a tough life. If you think it's easy to have an icon like Henry Ford as a father, you might want to think again. But, when it come full circle back around to the people who are using their influence to do nothing but good in the world, as opposed to using their influence to change thinking and to change minds and to tell people what the truth is and that sort of thing, that breaks down for me in a hurry. And there are very, very few people, but I always enjoyed Jack Welch. He was the kind of leader that, again, he would always imply a direction for the thinking and would never give an answer. I remember, listening in on a meeting at one point where somebody came down to it, and there were two possible prospects in terms of doing joint ventures, GE and a couple of other companies. And so what Jack would say was, what do you know about the relationships? And how do you feel about those relationships? I mean, we're talking about companies, they're hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And the last words out of his mouth before he got up and left the room to let people just kind of deal with it was, in a circumstance where it seems to be kind of a coin toss, I always like to go with loyalty. Now, talk about leaving that room full of people, on the horns of a dilemma.
Right.
So that was a great experience. And Warren Buffett, he still is a gentle giant. And he is distancing himself from people who have decided they want to now become an iconic soothsayer for the world.
Right.
And I appreciate that.
I just listened to a call with his name is Chuck Collins, who was in the Oscar Mayer family.
Yeah.
And he gave away, when he was 26 years old, gave away his fortune. He researched the heck out of it and gave it to the organizations that he thought would do the most good. And since then, he's been successful in trying to break down the extreme gaps in income and where the wealth is going, and how the wealthy are spending, how he put it, spending millions to save trillions.
Yeah.
And he wrote the Paradox Papers, and he's always involved in major organizations to help find the gaps. But what he discovered early on, and it kept like flooring him every time he discovered how one level of privilege was presented to him that was not available to almost anyone else except a few.
Yeah.
And every time he uncovered another one, it would just made him more satisfied that he gave away his riches and was living like most people have to live.
Yeah. So he was getting as much enjoyment out of making a game of giving everything away as he probably did, or maybe it was kind of a drudge for him to build it in the first place,
He was just constantly surprised,
Yeah.
but in a good way. of what the world has been doing and how nobody is, basically opening their eyes to it.
Yeah. So if you think about that for a minute in terms of the poem that you read us,
Right.
the, what to hand on. You know, you and I and 7.5 billion other people on this planet have a unique opportunity and a unique gift that we can give the rest of humanity if we choose to do so. And it doesn't mean that we have to be known.
Right.
This is one of those things. The Buddhists like to say that the the butterfly flapping its wings in the eastern hemisphere gives rise to the hurricanes in the western hemisphere. And it goes back to what Ken likes to say, you're not a drop in the ocean, you're the ocean in a drop. And so all of those things that you can lose yourself in thinking about and, contemplating and, just actually being quiet for a moment and see what shows up when you have these thoughts. I want to just ask everyone, and you in particular, Lisa, the notion of having a childlike, inquisitive nature and curiosity and naivete. Is that something that comes easy to you, or is that something that you find that you get reminded of in conversations with other people every once in a while? But when you're in the middle of a struggling situation or deadlines that are chewing you apart, or it's too many people that want you, now and not 5 minutes from now, all of that stuff. Where do you find your peace? Where do you find your ability to get centered again?
I think we're so fortunate in this day and age to have so many outlets to to kind of escape or to at least distract yourself from any moment that's tends to be stressful. And I also, wholeheartedly believed in spending your free time doing something that you really enjoy, so that the time that are spoken for by other people are less have less of an impact on you.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think like childlike curiosity sometimes sounds like it's immature, but I don't see it that way. It's more like you can have deep conversations about deep intellectual topics, but when you speak when you have a conversation and are curious about what the other person's saying in like a beginner's mind, childlike way, I think those are the conversations that are the best, because I do it all the time. I just bring in like, well, why do you think that way, or what do you really want in the situation, kind of thing. And then it opens up a whole new level of conversation, and I think people aren't used to getting that deep in conversations. But to me, that's like a childlike approach to things. Like I have no idea what the answer is, but I want to know more, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the answer is not the goal, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, it is so easy and so simple. If you can just get tattooed on the back of your hand, it's the journey, stupid. It's the journey, you know? And then that's why, whatever you're experiencing it, if you take a moment to just embrace that emotional feeling, that response, and you don't even have to analyze it or get inside of it and and try to figure out why you're behaving or reacting the way that you are. Sometimes it's just, I'm going to love this feeling now until it washes over me and dissipates. Just let it be.
Yep.
Start listening to Paul McCartney and let that kind of guide you for a minute. And whatever it is, and this is the other thing that I think is really kind of cool, and I don't know if this is Eastern philosophy, but whatever you resist persists. I think
Mhm.
you've all heard that. You want to forget about something, let it go. It's amazing the things that we don't remember that we don't remember,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many simple, I mean, reading this poem, that's things like that can get me right out of something.
Yeah.
Putting on music, I mean, we all have well, most of us have access to music, you know at the snap of a finger now. So, put on the music instead of having Siri just sit, or Alexa just sitting there. I want to make sure she didn't go on.
They have a mind of their own sometimes, don't they?
Yes. But, because music was always an important part of my life. I can remember it from being a young child and having my own little radio and just needing it. And, throughout college, I always went to sleep with music. I always had music while I was doing homework, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
To get back in that presence where there's some little distraction, some little nicety in the background playing for you, even while you're in a stressful situation.
Yeah, I had a very dear friend who's no longer with us about 25 years ago, and her first name was Cindy, and she ended up getting breast cancer, and she was also an ordained Methodist minister, but she didn't practice.
Mm-hmm.
She was also a businesswoman, and she was a wonderful, wonderful soul, and she couple of times invited 2 or 3 of us to come down to her home. She had a home that was 1 block off the water, down in the, not quite to New Haven, but wonderful, wonderful spot. And her home, everything was meticulously curated and placed in every single room for a reason. And what I remember her always saying was, in every moment, there is an opportunity to choose to cease suffering and to view it as a sacred practice. Whatever you're doing, there's always this opportunity to give it a rest for a minute and say, this involves me. God doesn't make junk. And I'm a sacred being on this planet. And so are all the other people, every last one of us. A lot of them don't know that yet. So if you have a choice to suffer or not suffer, why on earth would you ever choose suffering?
Right.
For more than a moment. So it all comes back to, if that is a practice, and we all know that practice makes
perfect,
except for it doesn't, does it?
No.
If we're lucky, practice makes progress.
Yeah. Or more practice.
And more practice, yeah. The reward for hard work is more hard work. So you can either, kind of accept that that is the road that you're on, and you chose that road. You probably forgot, but you did.
Right.
And the fact that you're doing what you're doing day in and day out, think back over your life. Remember, there was a time when you weren't doing this. You were doing something else. And before that, probably something else. And before that, probably something else. So every moment that there's an opportunity to be depressed or run down or tired or upset or angry or all of these things, unless you enjoy those states of mind, if you do, then, good on you. Play it out fully. Larry Flint said, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. Okay. So, let it go, let it run, let it be what it needs to be until you don't have that need any longer.
And there's other things to, we talk about the law of attraction or manifestation, as other people will call it too. But this morning I was watching Mel Robbins. She's an author and coach, and she did have a talk show for a moment. But she was talking about using the power of objectivity to manifest things that you want. So we've talked about things like that before. So if you're in a situation that you don't like what you're doing and you'd like to do something different and you want to picture it and try to manifest it for yourself, then if you get stuck at trying to see the steps that you need to take, picture somebody else in that position. So she said you could use her, and then all of a sudden your world will open up like, well, I wouldn't do that, but Mel would, that kind of thing. So I thought that was an interesting way to And it would be a fun game to play, and you could be childlike with that too. It's like, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm Mel Robbins right now, and what would I do if I wanted to start a business, or or open up a cookie shop, or even write a book or write an article, or do something silly, start a garden. How would I go about that? Or
Sure.
how would Mel go about that?
Yeah, 100%. Uh, I've actually had a couple of friends and employees who dove into the deep end of the pool and took on jobs that were just so far beyond their reasoning abilities, their experience, all the rest of that. But I knew and they knew they could do it.
Right.
And so one of such stories was a man who was a technical wizard for me for about 15 years. And then he took a job at UConn, and went out to lunch with him about 3 weeks later. And he said, Bill, he said, I really love this opportunity. He said, but I keep having these issues. He said, I keep getting in my own way. And I said, well, Chris, what do you think? And he said, well, he said, you know what works for me? And I said, no, what is that? He said, well, I just go, well, what would Bill do? And after 15 years, uh, he was a pretty good reporter on what Bill would do, and apparently it was working for him, to kind of take that mindset. So I love that you referenced the law of attraction, and I'm making it my personal mission in the world to rehabilitate, the whole notion of what it is. And what we have to say, is that there are opportunities in life where a belief system is very, very advantageous until it doesn't fit any longer. And the problem with every belief system that I've ever looked at or ever understood, or never ever just really got into and started looking at, was it's constantly inviting a challenge. That how can that be? Because, and I'll give you an example. When I was a young man, my mother and dad, I mean, this was before I was a young man. My mother had to convert to Catholicism so that they could get married in the Catholic Church, which they did. And of course, my mother was a zealot with anything that she ever did. She, whatever it was, she went to the nines, and God bless her. But she was really big on prayer and all that sort of thing. And of course, when I got to be old enough to do so, we went to catechism every Saturday morning, and then I was an altar boy and all the rest of that. So we had this marvelous pastor. His name was Father Miller, and he was as Irish as they come. He was, Roxbury Irish, from Boston. The uh, third generation was somebody of one of the brothers being a priest, right? And so he would come around, and probably in the third grade or so. And I asked him, I was always playing the George Carlin role of asking the hard questions of the priest, right? And I asked him one day, I said, Father, how old is the world? And he looked wistfully into the sky, and he said, Bill, he said, the Bible tells us that it's approximately 5,000 years old. And I said, okay. And I said, how do you explain dinosaurs? I mean, because if you're going to be a smart ass kid asking
Yeah.
the pastor a question, I had the follow up, and his answer to me was really, really unsatisfying. You know what he said?
No.
It's a mystery, my son.
Yeah.
I found that with him, that was his bailout on any tough question.
Yeah, right.
It's a mystery. Some things are not revealed to us. And, and when he was on, he would turn around and he would just re-ask the question, how old do you think the world is? And he was not highly educated. I mean, of course, he went to seminary, but he still talked like somebody that was a street kid, a street urchin. And I loved him for it. But when you think about those kinds of things where you've got your belief system. I'm coming back to that again because you know how I like to ping pong around the house. Something somewhere along the way is always going to come up, and it's going to fly in the face of the logic or the factual nature or whatever it is, except for some people refuse to listen. They refuse to take on board any of the negative connotation or something that would seem to disprove the belief, right?
Mhm.
Instead of saying, yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, go ahead. It's okay. And recently, I watched a man who came into a college university, in a hall with probably 300 seats in it, and they were socially distanced for COVID and all that kind of stuff. And he said, "I'm going to give you 10 reasons why I'm absolutely sure there is no God, there is no heaven, there is no hell." And so he proceeded to take questions for the next hour from all of these students. And they would say, well, how do you explain the Shroud of Turin? And so he'd say, well, da 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 da. There's some of the stuff, and maybe it's not that old, and there's conflicting science about the actual age and where the dust came from, and that's all stuff I never heard of, right? So the kid would stay with it, and he'd say, yes, but how do you explain the bloodstains of Jesus Christ on the Shroud of Turin? And the guy said, well, again, it's quite possible that that may have been actually manufactured somewhere around 700 AD. So the long and the short of it, they went on and on and on and on. And at the end of the day, at the end of this whole thing, he came back, and his closing remarks were, I'm not only not an atheist, I'm an ordained Catholic priest.
Wow.
I am no longer a practicing Catholic priest. I am a college professor, and I guess he's someplace in California. And he said, I do this around the country. I get invited to show up and give the greatest argument I possibly can to the faithful in the room, only to come back fully and tell you, I do believe in God. I do believe in heaven. I do believe in hell. And the reason that I'm challenging you is I want you to embrace the questions.
There you go.
I want you to not hang your hat on what somebody else told you about your faith. I
Right.
want you to choose your faith in every hard moment. I want you, and I'm paraphrasing to beat the band here, but his message was so powerful in terms of what do you do when somebody challenges your faith or your belief system? You fold like a piece of origami. And that's okay. Unfold again and go back to your previous shape, better informed, more fully understanding what you believe, because you need to believe something.
Yeah.
That's kind of the human nature is people can't flail around thinking that they're all that there is. So it's the same thing. And I told you that story to come full circle again. I do keep track. I leave a break to come back to the law of attraction. So all of these belief systems, for me, are best addressed as metaphors. They're great stories.
Mm-hmm.
And no, there's no proof positive, that people weren't paid to write the Bible. I mean, in fact, they were paid. The Nicene Council and all the rest of that sort of thing. What was that? 400 years after the crucifixion date,
Right.
and there were books that were written and were not put into this Bible. The King James Bible and the original one uh, had many other books in Aramaic and other scrolls that had been lost and found. And we had that big hoax. You remember the Dead Sea Scrolls having been found and all the rest of that? And that turned out to be, well, maybe not. So the challenge every single day, I don't even care if you're an atheist, because an atheist believes there is no this, there is no that. But guys, we can have so much more fun if we'll set that down and say, roll our sleeves up and say, bring it.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Tell me more.
Yeah, how does that work? How's that work for you? I mean, let's just say it's not true for everybody, but I want to hear what's true for you. There's that childlike curiosity.
Yeah.
Until they've had a bad experience with pain, most children are willing to try something over and over and over again. And that's remarkable to me.
It is.
So where in your life would having, I call this a gear, there's muscle to be built in terms of accepting the fallibility of what you're perceiving right now in this moment and challenging that with a question. Or you can hire people to follow you around and do that, They're called friends, actually. You tell a friend something that you want to be reminded of. I set a goal to lose 50 pounds. And for the next 3 years, how you doing with that, The first thing we talk about, well, you were going to go to Puerto Rico the last time I talked to you. Well, that didn't happen. And so when are you going to go,
Yeah.
You ever notice that dynamic with people that you talk to and you tell them something and it's kind of like the first thing that's out of their mouth, Either, man, you look terrific. You were really good at that 40, 50 pound loss,
Or you stop telling people things so they won't remind you.
Exactly. Well, we didn't quite get that done, but yeah, someday.
Right. And I was thinking about, I actually belong to Unity Church, and I've always known that they have based a lot of things on the 12 powers that, and we celebrate them every year, and I just never paid attention to them too much, but I'm taking a more in-depth class right now, and how these powers are available to us all the time, and we're using them all the time, whether consciously or unconsciously. So the 12 are faith, strength, discernment, love, dominion, imagination, understanding, will, order, enthusiasm, elimination, and life. So it's kind of cool, like if you are stuck or curious or want to switch things around, like you were talking, to figure out what powers you're using or what powers you would like to use in order to better the moment or be more informed about the moment or be more curious about the moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so interesting to really think about what you're doing in every moment and how you got there. What powers in life are you using?
It's a great way to observe.
True.
Yeah. And we have this way of referring to ourselves, several different kind of metaphors, but one is observe yourself observing.
Right.
Yeah. Or listen to yourself listen. How do you listen? What are you hearing? What are the things that are coming up for you in response to any type of input whatsoever? And so now if you have this toolkit, and this I'm going to say probably takes a while, to even remember, because that whole idea of having the toolkit, you got this remember, forget, it opens, it closes. Oh, I have other tools in the toolkit too, not just this one, right?
Yeah, forgot about that one.
Yeah. So how do you actually get the on the court training for that? What do you do in terms of a practice?
I'm literally in the middle of this class. So, our homework, so to speak, is to just find little situations and take a look at what you're using.
Yeah.
Record it, remember, instead of just being, going through obliviously, basically, without knowing what you're using. I mean, it's an interesting, and it another thing that takes practice. And we're so used to doing everything so automatically that to take the time to think about, and which could be another way out of any of your stressful or whatever kind of moment that is not appealing to you at the time. If you break that cycle by trying to investigate it for yourself, all of a sudden you're like, what powers am I using? Before you know it, the situation that was bothering you has now become a catalyst to improving and finding new ways to look at things.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, the the whole idea of having that interruption or some kind of a disruption or a break in the action where you can interject. Like a lot of people, their response to an upset is a lot more like getting their finger wet, sticking it in your mouth and then plugging it into an outlet, where you're completely immobilized and just shaking and you know uh, and then the goal is not to have those things not happen. The goal is to shorten the duration of them so that your feeling of disempowerment is followed by a very strong reaction by yourself, standing up for yourself as one of those sacred beings that we were talking about a little bit earlier, that's worthy and worthwhile and can make a choice.
Right.
And I guess the phoning a friend, or asking the audience is a good way to go. When you announce to people that you're looking to accomplish something in the world, it is remarkable the kind of feedback that you will get. You'll get the naysayers, the family who basically says, "Well, don't do that because it's too hard, and we don't want to see you fail," and have you know that whole conversation. Or then there's the other ones who go, "I know somebody that did that really well, and it works for them, and." I enjoy being around them. Maybe you can keep me posted as to how that's going. I really want to
Yep.
hear more about it, right? And then there are the other people who go, okay, meh.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you get to know which friends are that way. So,
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
And guess who you keep sharing what you're up to with, and not
exactly.
so much around the others.
Exactly. Why didn't I know that about you?
Yeah. So what if the takeaways from today's conversation, of what to hand on, what if you and I handed on three concepts for people to take a hard look at? How about the concept of each one of us, simply because we're here, we made it. I like the guy who says you won the sperm wars, okay? You were
Right.
the fastest, the biggest, and the strongest at one point in your existence. Don't forget that. You earned the right to be here, okay? And so the other part of it is you're not alone. You know, the the mantra of we are all one, and then the notes for the we are all one, that chord. And those are the ones that you can immediately invoke goosebumps with. Any place you are, just sing that a couple of times. You can't be anything other than moved. Give it a shot, Lisa.
Give it a shot. We are all one.
And how does that make you feel?
Oh, well, see, there's music again, right? So,
Yeah. And so everybody has access to music, and they
exactly.
all they all sing in tune. Have you ever noticed that when no one else is around? Just the little kids again. So that's number two. We're not alone. And every single other person on the face of the planet, no matter how good you think they're doing, no matter how much you think they've got it handled, man, they just like you. There is nobody who sits in their bedroom in the morning and their clothes just fly onto their body. I haven't met anybody that can do that. And all the people, I don't care who it is, because I've asked hard questions of almost everybody I know, and I'm kind of a nuisance and a pain in the ass that way because I'm constantly researching. And they all tell me the same thing. And the ones who I consider as kind of like being at the head of the pack, the front of the class, these are the people who I think have at least a good response, to their lives not seeming to work for them. Well, they don't take it on board like it's a permanent thing. And they immediately take responsibility for it. And then they go and find out how to leverage their tribe. It could be just checking in and saying, I'm having an extraordinarily horrible day today. I had to hear your voice because I had to have some tether back to what my life is all about. I got to get away from these thoughts that I'm thinking. You know,
Yep,
you ever have those moments?
of course.
Yeah. I mean, they could be just as insidious as being a whole string of negative thoughts, nothing that's really super out of balance or, certainly not life threatening, but those negative thoughts are doing, they're kind of like a damper to joy. They're not allowing that happiness, which is your birthright, by the way.
Hmm.
I don't know if you remember this, but when I got kicked out of heaven to go back and be part of the exchange between the seed and the zygote, it was like, okay, go out and play, go
Exactly.
have some fun. I might ask you about it in a few years. You better have some good stories for me. So we're not alone. And then, so the first thing is we're special 100% for no reason and for every reason.
Right.
And we're not alone. And the third one is with a little help from my friends. So I really enjoyed you kicking us off with a poem today. And I'd like to do the same if that's okay.
Please.
Maybe as kind of a wrap up.
Yeah.
This is something that I've been reading to people for, I don't know, about 30 years. I picked it up from some friends back in the early 1990s. And this is a great, great thing to share in a group. And it's called The Goose Story. Now, it's been attributed to many different people, but back in the original days when I went and did some research on it, I couldn't find anybody who was actually the author.
Hmm.
And you know how some facts have changed on the internet,
Yeah.
in the last 25 years, may or may not be attributable to a person, or it may have been something that just sort of got said over and over again. It could be hundreds of years old, actually. So next fall, when you see geese heading south for the winter, flying along in V formation, you might consider what science has discovered as to why they fly that way. As each bird flaps its wings, it creates an uplift for the bird immediately following. By flying in V formation, the whole flock adds at least 71% greater flying range than if each bird flew on its own. People who share a common direction and sense of community can get where they are going more quickly and easily because they are traveling on the thrust of one another. When a goose falls out of formation, it suddenly feels the drag and resistance of trying to go it alone and quickly gets back into formation to take advantage of the lifting power of the bird in front. If we have as much sense as a goose, we will stay in formation with those who are headed the same way as we are. When the head goose gets tired, it rotates back into the wing and another goose flies point for a while. It is sensible to take turns doing demanding jobs with people or with geese flying south. Geese honk from behind to encourage those up front to keep up their speed. What do we say when we honk from behind? And finally, this is important. When a goose gets sick or is wounded by gunshots and falls out of formation, two other geese fall out with that goose and follow it down to lend help and protection. They stay with the fallen goose until it is able to fly or until it passes. And only then do they launch out on their own or with another formation to catch up with their group. If we have the sense of a goose, we will stand by each other like that. And that's the name of that tune.
I've read something similar before.
Yeah.
So makes things clear. And that bring back the saying that I keep misquoting, but I will try it again. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, I don't have a whole heck of a lot more to add today. I think we gave our are all in a short period of time, and hopefully the folks at home have gotten a proton pill that's going to get you up and out and doing whatever you need to be doing, fully functioning and having the most amazing day ever.
Exactly. Do it now.
Yes, just do it. I don't know, somebody said that somewhere. I don't know what that.
Yeah, should be a slogan.
Yeah, it might be. So in the meanwhile, I just want to mention again that we do this every single week, and the whole goal is to speak to you in the future, from the past and from the future. And when we do that, and when we're actually having the kind of conversation that moves us and makes us feel at a level that's uncommon, let's say, or might be even extraordinary from time to time, but goosebumps are a really good thing to have in your life. Good goosebumps are that's a good goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that all said, I just want to remind you, you found us. You are among the chosen of the chosen. And as a result of that, we are on podcast platforms all over the place. And we have one left to go, according to our producer, Mr. Eric Lopkin. And he's working diligently to make that one a reality as well. But I think there's any place you listen to podcasts, we're there. So in the meantime, I'm Bill Correll, and this is my buddiette for a long time now, but not long enough, Lisa Sheehan. And we're so pleased to have spent time with you. I'm so pleased to have spent time with you today, Lisa, as well.
Go have fun, everyone.
Absolutely. Come back and see us and tell your friends.
Have a good week.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us each week, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.